In May, the primary election for mayor of Philadelphia takes place, and with nearly a dozen candidates involved, there's a lot to weed through to make your decision. I'm Bill Anderson, and as a part of the Lenfest Institute for Journalism's Every Voice, Every Vote initiative, we're committed to sharing as much information as possible to help create an informed electorate. So join us as we continue the journey for the next 30 minutes. Now, in order to win, the candidates are going to have to convince voters that they have a firm grasp on how to solve the biggest issues facing us, gun violence. So we went out to speak to community members and activists to see how they feel it's going so far. Got a bunch of people out there. Any confidence that any of them will make a real difference as it relates to violence in our community?
I have no confidence in them because the bottom line is they have to work with city council. Some of them used to be on city council.
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that politicians could figure this out. But I think overall, the focus for me is looking at people's track records.
I want to be confident that they will do so. I have hope that they will do something, yes.
I think so. The issue is really what candidate's going to present a plan that is a coordinated effort to get everybody together to have a plan to move forward to reduce shootings.
They talk a good talk. I just hope that they'll, back it up.
Clean the city.
Some of the people that I talk to, they don't think that they're not going to do anything. But I think they could do something, but at the same time, we as people in the community have to also help them. It's not just one person that can do this.
So I think as the leading executive of the fifth largest city in the country, the mayor, whoever's elected, does have a tremendous impact on not only direction, but the culture of the city in terms of violence and violence prevention.
But what they need to do is to come out and know that the mothers are hurting. The gun violence is often, and they need to come out to the rallies like we are right now. The candidates need to be lined up right here, right now, to see what's going on.
And we can make this collective stand.
You're bringing the dirt to the table. We need to work together. City council needs to work with the mayor needs to work with us. Everyone else up there needs to work together. Until we do that, we're never going to solve this problem.
And that candidate should also be a person that will open up, embrace the community as part of major partner in reducing violence.
All the politicians we voted in, who has actually kept their word after we voted them in? That's my thing. They come in, they get our votes, and then they fade on us. We don't get any of the policies they talked about. They'll do anything for us after they get our votes.
We need leadership. We are part of the leadership right here, right now, so we're starting it. So if you guys come and help us, maybe somebody will listen to them as well.
We hear talk a lot about police, more police and stuff like that. Police do a tremendous job under the circumstances, but we need better coordination in the city of Philadelphia.
Do you think community and people you interact with are paying attention to this upcoming election? Are people engaged or just frustrated?
I think they're frustrated, and most of all, I think they're disillusioned.
What do they need to hear from you in order to change?
We don't have to say anything. They can see what needs to be done in this city. Every night you're hearing somebody got shot, somebody got killed.
2 teens shot near 19th and Montgomery in North Philly.
They're all devastated that this happened to them and their friends.
Philadelphia now, because of the consistent levels of violence, we're in like a funk.
Because so much has happened, so much time has gone by, so many promises, so much money, but still no results.
To be honest, it's like people just feel like it's going to be the same old thing. It's going to be the same old same. It's really going to be no results. It's just going to be passing the torch, same old thing year after year.
A lot of our young people need to come out and vote. That's who need to come. I work on the polls sometimes, and it's mostly the older senior citizens that come out to vote. And it needs to be younger people that's coming out, and younger people need to register to vote.
If you're not visible, if you're not present, if you're making statements publicly about you can't wait to not be mayor, it doesn't instill confidence in community to believe that the highest ranking political leadership has their best interests at heart. I think they're not encouraged. I don't think they're confident of what's going to happen just because the last 8 years or so have been horrendous for the city.
The new mayor will have to definitely build in their system to make sure that the folks on the ground doing the work are part of the process.
Stop the violence. Stop.
Coming up, his career is about helping determine what drives people and candidates. So what does a longtime political strategist think will ultimately decide this election?
I think no matter who you ask in the city, public safety, gun violence is the main policy issue driving how people are making their decisions.
We all see the daily reports of violence in our city, but is that what voters are really focused on? And if so, do any of the candidates have the upper hand in convincing people that they have the solutions? Let's talk to a political strategist with years of experience to get his take.
Folks like us who pay attention to this stuff, we know all these candidates. I still think, even with just under 80 days before the election, I think there's a significant portion of the Democratic electorate in the city that has no idea who any of these candidates are.
Joe Hill is a policy and strategies expert at law firm Cozen O'Connor with deep political experience. So his take on the current crop of candidates should be listened to, as well as the issues that will likely sway the upcoming mayoral primary.
COVID, years of civil unrest, following the George Floyd incident, and now with a significant uptick in homicides and violent crime, I think no matter who you ask in the city, public safety, gun violence is the main policy issue driving how people are making their decisions.
It's not surprising that gun violence, and really violence in general, is top of voters' minds. But violence as an issue in Philly really isn't new. So why now is it the issue rather than an issue?
20 years ago, when this was candidly happening in majority black neighborhoods, it wasn't rising to the level among broad swaths of the electorate. Now you're seeing it impacting everyone. And I think that's why it's almost the singular issue in this election.
The village can still raise a family, so let's put it back together.
That's not to say that violence is the only issue. Voters do care about other things, just not in the way that we have in the past.
Typically you see education, city services, general views about how the city is managed rising to the level. Now I think people acknowledge that this is an inflection point and we're at a crisis moment as a city because it impacts almost everyone.
Even with so many different candidates touting so many different experiences and backgrounds, with violence being the biggest issue, will they be able to convince voters that their background really distinguishes them?
This is a unique position because no one, unless you've sat in the mayor's chair or have been the police commissioner, has been responsible for the safety of, a city of this size. So I don't think anybody can really point to, what they've done in this space, but they can show, through their lived experience, how they approach these issues, what their values are.
And on top of that, the candidates also face an increasingly skeptical electorate that they have to convince not only that they have new ideas, but that they're willing to work collaboratively to make things better.
I think they recognize that having effective leadership, in City Hall is a necessary condition for these things to change. I think they recognize that it isn't sufficient. And that's why I'm glad that folks are coming together to work on these issues, because it's going to take more than who's on second floor of City Hall.
Coming up next, there seems to be some sort of forum or community event featuring the candidates every day. So where do they stand on the election's largest issue?
So in the first year of a Green administration, we're going to have a 25% reduction in shootings in the city of Philadelphia. We're going to do that through presence, accountability, opportunity, and investment.
Multiple campaign events per week allow the candidates to try and get their message to resonate. But is it working? We went to one of the many forums to get just a little taste of where many of the candidates stand. Gun violence is the key issue motivating potential voters this election season, and the candidates all know it.
So in the first year of a Green administration, we're going to have a 25% reduction in shootings in the city of Philadelphia. We're going to do that through presence, accountability, opportunity, and investment.
The court is a necessary component of reducing gun violence and also turning around poverty.
The interesting part that you can see from this one and many of the forums is that the ideas to address the issue are many and diverse.
That means that we have more people out on the streets, whether that's more officers on foot and bike patrol, and believe me, I'm going to be right there alongside with them. That means that we have community mediators and violence interrupters who are on the street, because not every solution is solved with a gun, a badge, and a uniform.
We have to get creative and understand that a lot of the violent crime is directly connected to social media. So what we plan to do within the first 100 days is put together a social media task force.
As expected, there's a lot of talk about police.
I will make sure that every single department is laser focused on those 100 hotspots, cameras, lighting, cleaning, stabilizing buildings.
We do not have to be put into a box to think that we don't have a right to have community policing that is proactive community policing, walking the beat, riding the bike, getting to know the community that you're sworn to protect and serve.
And what we're trying to do is we want a fair policing system that treats everybody equally or fairly, but at the same token, we target people that are violent criminals. To do that, it starts out with leadership.
Some even acknowledge they're looking at each other for answers.
I'm going to be adopting all their great ideas. You see all these great ideas they have on stopping violence? They will not go to waste, trust me. The Bible says, in the multitude of good counsel, there is safety. I've already appointed certain people. Maria, I'm appointing you, and Sherelle, they already know they're going to be my deputy mayor.
So pay attention to what you've heard and what you're hearing.
First thing I would do as mayor of Philadelphia is to appoint a police commissioner from this city and perhaps from this very community. And I would look for someone who had a challenged background, that has a track record of working in the community.
On day one, I would declare a citywide emergency, open the Emergency Operations Center, so that the city departments could be coordinated in their response.
In the long term, it's all about education. It's about teaching our kids K through 12 financial literacy, teaching them technology, teaching them entrepreneurship.
May is roughly 2 months away, and with violence being the key issue, a big decision lies in all of our hands. A singular important topic and a dozen candidates makes this election season seem unusual. But next, political analyst Bruce Gordon breaks down where we are and what we should expect moving forward.
I guess I'm a little surprised at the sheer number of folks who've thrown their hats in the ring. But again, most of these are relatively young people who decided, I'm not waiting another 8 years for my next shot at becoming mayor.
It seems like this political season is out of the ordinary, but is it really? Political analyst Bruce Gordon explains that yes, there are some surprises, but things are mostly going as expected so far.
Where do you think we are in this great mayoral candidate run of 12 people?
Well, look, I think it's still very early. We're still in the process of sorting things out. And I think one of the things that's noteworthy, at least this time around and at least this early, is the lack of real meaningful polling means that we have some vague ideas of whose resume seems better, whose name recognition might be up there, but we really don't know with any kind of clarity who's in front, because I think sometimes we tend to get too much into the horse race and we decide that candidate X might actually have something interesting to say to us, but gee, the early polling shows them at 2%. They got no chance of winning, so why am I bothering paying attention to them? At this point, those at least who are interested in this race should be looking at all of these candidates.
That steers a little opposite what some people are saying. Like you're okay with the fact that they're all still in and numbers haven't kind of forced people out of the discussion.
Look, there are going to be some folks who will have problems with their nominating petitions, for example. I would expect, at least one or two candidates maybe have some problems getting enough legitimate signatures. They may pass the threshold, but then some of those names get challenged and it turns out they don't have enough. So it would not surprise me if we lose a candidate or two at the nominating petition deadline or through that process. Also, I think these guys, while there are no broad polls out there, public polls, don't believe for a minute that some of these folks aren't doing some of their own inside polling. Less expensive, and it gives them an idea. Look, am I kidding myself here? Do I really have a shot or do I not? And the even more obvious metric, of course, is money. Am I able to raise money?
You and I have talked about this, and we say it's early in the race, but it's March for all intents and purposes. That means we're 8 weeks out. But is that really that early?
I think within the next couple of weeks, we'll start to see things percolate a little more. And we will not probably for a number of weeks now, frankly, start seeing a barrage of TV commercials. You don't want to waste your money too early. Money's in short supply for many of these candidates, not all of them, but for many of them. And so you can't be running campaign commercials so early that by the time May rolls around, people have forgotten what they saw.
Some of the, in quotes, major endorsements have started to fall in line. Some of the major unions falling in line. And how much of an impact are they really going to have? Or is the endorsement less important and their actual ability to get people out becomes why that matters?
Bingo. That's exactly right. Look, the endorsement itself gives you at least one, maybe two free stories in the newspaper, on television, and so forth. Then it kind of settles down for a while. Then you come down to election day. That organization, depending on which organization we're talking about, has in many cases a strong get out the vote organization. They have the logistical ability, the people who are there in place to be able to get the voters out on your behalf. And so that can be very important.
When are we sitting down with Bruce Gordon leading up to the election and going, okay, now it's these, 5. Now these are the people who are actually involved.
I would think it could easily be mid-April. That is to say, a month to go before the actual election itself. Once you get within a month or so of the election, we're likely to have at least one, maybe a couple of televised debates on one of the major television stations in town. And that certainly brings everything out to the forefront, really puts it on center stage, so to speak. So when you get within a month or so of the election, now maybe you're down to 5 or 6 candidates, and you could have yourself a legitimate debate. But I do think it's likely to be at least that late into the game before we really start seeing this thing cook.
Anything surprise you about, not necessarily the candidate, but the process?
Really, only every 8 years is there this kind of an opportunity for a politician with some real ambition to become mayor to actually get into the game. Once one of these candidates, and again, it's almost certain to be a Democrat who will win the general election, once that candidate wins the general election, they're certainly going to run for re-election. Tradition and history tells us they will win that re-election. So it's not for another 8 years that someone would have an opportunity like this. And so we've seen a lot of folks decide, I'm not waiting 8 years, I'm getting in now. I guess I'm a little surprised at the sheer number of folks who've thrown their hats in the ring. But again, most of these are relatively young people who decided, I'm not waiting another 8 years for my next shot at becoming mayor. They think the time is ripe, and they're going to go for it.
Now, the whole point of these specials is to make sure as many people as possible participate and do it with information. I'm Bill Anderson, and we'll continue to keep you informed all the way up to the primary and beyond. You can always get more information on the Every Voice, Every Vote initiative at fox29.com or the Every Voice, Every Vote website. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good one.